I'll turn the board around because I was playing black. Okay, like this. And interesting is actually also theoretically the variation in the Pirc defense that we played is a very interesting one. Queen to e2. Now this is not played many times. After knight to c6, white plays e5 here, and this is an invitation actually for black to take on d4 and accept a queen sacrifice of white for 3 light pieces. And according to the theory, it's a risky thing to do for black. I played knight takes d4, and he took on f6. I took the queen. He took on g7. I went to g8 with my rook, and he took on e2. So we have this position where black has his queen for 3 light pieces of white. And the alternative here that is actually advised by the theory is not to accept this wild variation, but to play simply knight to d7. And here in this position white has 3 main possible continuations. The best is simply developing with knight to f3. And now black's strategy is to try to exchange the light square bishop of white by later playing knight to a5. The idea of exchanging this light square bishop is that after castling it becomes easier for black to play f6 and attack the white center. So a possible variation here is after knight f3, knight to b6, attacking the bishop. Bishop goes to b3. Now castling, white plays here h3 to prevent bishop to g4, pinning the knight on f3. Now knight to a5, and already we can say that this bishop on b3 will be exchanged. There is no way to prevent it. So after castling, h6 to control the g5 square, and after knight e4, knight takes b3, a takes b3, and now black can play f6. And this is an equal position. White has the center, black has 2 bishops, and black is trying to undermine this white center. Now in the position after knight to d7, so here after e5, knight to d7, there are also a few, let's say, wild ideas for white, but they are not that good. One of them is to play e6 here, and the other one is to play bishop takes f7. Let's have a short look at e6 first. F takes e6, queen takes e6, threatens mating 1 on f7, but now black has the move knight to e5, and the bishop on c8 is attacking the queen on e6. And now after queen to d5, bishop to e6, and black has a warm position, because if the queen moves to b5, the queen is almost trapped now. If it moves to b5, then simply knight takes c4, and black has a perfect position. The other idea after knight to d7 is, as I said, to take on f7. Then king takes f7, and after e6, king to e8, d takes e7, bishop takes d7. So black returns the sacrificed piece immediately, and after knight to f3, knight to d4, and this is followed then by bishop to f5, and black has absolutely no problem. The only thing is that black cannot castle anymore, but there are ways to make a kind of artificial castling, or try to keep the center closed. White has lost his center pawn, so it's not that easy for white to open the center. But anyway, these are the possibilities if you like to play after e5 knight to d7 to play, let's say, the more safe variations. Now the wildest of all is knight takes d4, and this is what happened in our game. He took on f6, I took on e2, he took on g7, rook to g8, knight takes e4, and rook takes g7. And now a very good move by white is bishop to h6. The rook must go to g8, and this bishop on h6 is very strong because it keeps the rook on g8 out of play, controlling the g7 and f8 square. White castled here, and here I played bishop to e6. Now I wonder if in this position maybe c6 is an alternative idea, and the question is whether this light squared bishop of white is as dangerous as it looks. The idea of c6 is to prepare d5, so closing this diagonal towards f7. So this is something to investigate and maybe play next time. But here I played bishop to e6, bishop takes e6, f takes e6. This has been played before in tournament games, and white here has two main possibilities. One is to play knight to f4, and the other one is to play f4 immediately. In the game my opponent played f4, and this was an interesting moment. I chose to play queen to d7 with the idea of castling queenside and bring my king into safety out of the center. But another option would be to play c5 here to take away the d4 square for white. Since white has placed a pawn on f4, the white knight, to attack e6, he only has the d4 square. So that would be the idea of playing c5, and if rook a to e1, maybe black can play even d5 now, controlling all the center squares. Of course the d pawn is pinned, so knight to e4 is possible, but then queen to b6, defending the e6 pawn and using more space. After knight to g5, castling queenside, and I think this position is very good playable for black. Still, of course, there is a long way to go. It's a long fight that will happen, but it's interesting to play c5. Now let's go back to the game. I played queen to d7, rook to e1, castle queenside, knight to d4, attacking the e6 pawn. I decided simply to not to defend or to advance this e4 e6 pawn, but simply to play king to b8, with the main idea of making the c8 square available for my rook, because he takes on e6. And now if my king would still be on c8, I would have to go with my rook to e8, and after that white at least has the option of playing knight to g7, attacking the rook again, and if the rook goes back to d8, then knight to e6. So then there is the possibility of repeating moves, and to avoid that I play king to b8, and now rook to c8. Bishop to g5 was played here, and this is the moment when I start playing too fast. I played here rook c to e8, defending the e7 pawn, and just a few moves later I realized that I could have played h6 here, because after bishop takes h6, rook to h8, the bishop goes to g5, and now I can take on h2, and after g4 the other rook goes to the h file, and black start getting counterplay here. But anyway, in the game, bishop to g5, rook c to e8 was played. He played g3 here, so again I missed here the possibility of playing h6. That was still possible, and I played b6 with the idea of taking away the c5 square for the knight, since my queen is pinned here. knight to d5 was played, c6, knight to c7 attacking my rook went to c8, and he gave a check on a6, and here this is the moment of my blunder. I played king to b7, and after knight to c5 check I resigned immediately because it's lost suddenly. My pawn on d6 is pinned, so I have to take the knight with the b pawn, and then after that the other knight takes on c5 and I lose my queen. If I take the knight with the d pawn, then rook takes d7. So that was the sudden end, and an alternative of course would have been to play king to a8 here, and then there is the fight continues.